New allegations that U.S. President Donald Trump's son may have colluded with the Russians. Plus, Russia considers expelling U.S. diplomats if its property is not returned. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Allegations that the Trump campaign conspired with Russia are nothing new. Multiple investigations are ongoing, both in the U.S. Congress and by a special prosecutor. Now come fresh allegations that the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., Mr. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and campaign manager Paul Manafort all met in June 2016 with a Russian attorney after being promised incriminating, quote, dirt on Mr. Trump's opponent, Hillary Clinton. We get the latest now from Jessica Stone at the White House. And Jessica, this story has been moving quickly over the past 24 hours. What do we know, and what's been the reaction from the president and Donald Trump Jr.?
Moving quickly, Anand, and adding new characters along the way. You really need a playbill for this drama when it comes to keeping track of everybody. Let me start with this. Don Jr., the son of U.S. President Donald Trump, released a set of emails today that he wasn't planning on releasing until the New York Times obtained them. They come from a British publicist, a music publicist who was representing at the time a Russian pop star. And here was the promise that he made via email, according to those emails released by Don Jr. He promised, quote, to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary Clinton, the presumed Democratic presidential nominee at the time, and her dealings with Russia, and would be very useful to your father, Rob Goldstone wrote. Now, the emails identify a Russian government attorney who wants to provide this information and meet with Don Jr., and they also make clear that the Russian government supports Donald Trump's candidacy for president. Less than 20 minutes after that email is sent, there's a reply from Don Jr. on June 3rd, 2016, and it says this, in part, "And if it's what you say, I love it, especially later in the summer." Now, this implies that Don Jr. thought the information would be useful, that he could use it potentially in the general election campaign, or at least the early stages or the last stages of the primary debate there. But before emails were even released to the public, that happened this morning, NBC News had a chance to interview that Russian attorney who says she was in the room with Don Jr. last summer about whether she promised to provide that incriminating information on Hillary Clinton. Take a listen.
It is possible they had a desire to hear that information. So from what I told them, they only heard the part that interested them. I was interested in something else.
So what does President Trump have to say about all of this? Well, the White House has had a confusing timeline about when he knew about this meeting, saying just in the last few days he learned about it. But he did release a statement via a spokesperson today, and it says simply, quote, "My son is a high-quality person, and I applaud his transparency." But Anand, critics are obviously questioning what's transparent about waiting more than a year to divulge these very questionable emails between a campaign of Donald Trump and a Russian representative purporting to have information on the candidate in opposition.
Jessica, separately, there's a report citing Russian foreign ministry sources that plans are being drawn up to expel about 30 U.S. diplomats if the United States doesn't release 2 Russian compounds that were seized by American authorities last year. What's behind that, and has there been any reaction from the White House?
Well, no reaction from the White House because they're tied up with this email story, I gotta say. But this whole exchange goes back to the Obama administration. In December, if you remember, in retaliation for those allegations of Russian meddling in the U.S. presidential election in 2016, Obama decided to expel 35 Russian diplomats from the United States and seize 2 Russian compounds that are housed in the United States. And so we're just now learning from the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, that Russia is considering retaliatory steps, including what you mentioned, the expulsion of 30 U.S. diplomats and some seizure of U.S. properties in Russia. Now, the timing clearly after the meeting between Presidents Putin and Trump at the G20, so significant there, but also insignificant in terms of the options for President Trump. You know, if he backs down and gives this property back, allows these diplomats back into the country, it only leads to more questions at home about his potential favoritism towards the Russians, lends to that narrative. If he doesn't, it goes against the very thing he says he wants to do, which is to improve U.S.-Russia relations. So no good options for him there.
Thanks, Jessica. That's CGTN's Jessica Stone reporting from the White House.